Hey, Wagwan, welcome to Memory Lane. This is the channel where we talk about childhood memories. Memories growing up in the 60s and into the 70s and maybe a little bit of the 80s back in Jamaica. Now, if you're happening on this channel for the first time, stick around because, I love you to share what life was like for you back then, Maybe life was a bed of roses, or maybe it was a nightmare. Anyway, enough of that. Today we're going to be talking about breakfast, right? Now, I think for many of us in this kind of modern society, at least for me, we take our meals for granted. We have access to so much food, as long as you have a job and, you can provide for yourself. We have access to so much food. Sometimes it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to hear the amount of food that goes to waste in Canada every year. It's unbelievable, when there are so many people all over the country who can't find enough to eat. That is the most paradoxical thing I can ever imagine. But it happens. It happens. So sometimes the things that we take for granted, for other people, life is not that easy. So today, I want to talk about what life was like back in the 60s into the 70s, and specifically what life was like as it relates to having a breakfast. Now, I can tell you, breakfast was a foreign word for me, right? Breakfast, what was breakfast? So essentially, breakfast for me was, leaving maybe a half a dumpling or a piece of yam that we had for dinner the evening before. We would cover it up under a plate, God forbid that the ants should get to it first, or maybe the roach should get to it first, or the mice would get to it first if you not cover it up properly. Yeah, so for us, or for me, breakfast was a half of a dumpling or maybe a piece of yam and occasionally a slice of bread to have with maybe a cup of lime leaf tea or maybe some fever grass tea or maybe a little peppermint. And if you were lucky, you might have a cup of Milo. That might have happened maybe 3 or 4 times a year, because we were poor. Who could afford Milo? Yeah, so talking about the issue of breakfast, it is something that I take for granted nowadays. Mind you, I don't have a platter, a huge thing of breakfast every morning. But I wake up, I go into the kitchen. I'm sure there is something there that I can toast. I'm sure there are eggs there that I can fry an egg or maybe boil an egg. There may be some drink in the fridge, whether it be orange juice, pineapple juice, or whatever kind of drink. There's so many kind of drink, And breakfast is something that I think most people, living in a modern society, living in in these big cities, take for granted. Growing up as a kid, like I said, breakfast was just some overnight food. You get your dinner, you eat eat what you can. Sometimes you want to eat the entire plate, but you know that in the morning before you go to school, there's nothing else in the house for you to have. There's no bread there because the bread is done, and my grandmother could not, didn't have the money to buy another loaf of bread, right? There's no potato pudding because we could not afford the sugar for the pudding, or potato was just not in season, or for whatever reason, right? And so breakfast was just something simple, some overnight, some leftover food, right, from the evening before. And the good part about that, though, is that, I was from a village where there was a lot of avocado. Now, I'm living in this country where, avocado is so expensive. Where I grew up back home, we had avocados, like we would say, to stone dog, right? I hope you understand this terminology. And I mean, I'm going to kill your dog or anything. But we had so much of it, we didn't know what to do with it. So this became a staple part of dinner. There were all kind of avocados, huge avocados, big like my head, and tiny ones that you'll find, that you might find here in the supermarkets. Green skin avocado, red skin avocado, all kind of avocados, right? Back home we just call it pear, okay? We just call it pear. That's what we grew up calling avocado back home, pear. We talk about avocado as a kid growing up. People wondering, what is avocado? Yeah, so I grew up calling it pear. So here's what we would do for breakfast some mornings, right? We would, after my grandma, make up the fire, it was wood fire, of course, and take off the bun pan with the hot water to make some tea, right? Then we would separate the coal embers or the fire coal. Then we would take out, or one, the one dumpling we had left over, or the piece of yam we had left over, and then we would toast it on the coal, or to heat it up, and just like how you'd put a slice of bagel in the toaster, these days, toast your piece of dumpling or your piece of yam or whatever, your piece of breadfruit, whatever it was. And then, most likely we would have pear. And I can tell you, man, sometimes sometimes we had half of a dumpling, and we had this huge avocado, and we would use this half of a dumpling to eat with this massive avocado. So in a sense, there was more avocado than dumpling. But it was something we loved, something we enjoyed. It served a very good purpose. Avocados were plentiful. Every homes had avocado trees around, big trees, small trees, avocado of different varieties and sizes. And so when we had, for example, if we had dinner and we never had any meat, and you had a ripe avocado to go with your dinner, No, that was not a big deal if you never, it wasn't a big deal if you never had meat. You know, you had a nice plate of food, whether it be just yam and dumpling or just plain white rice, and you never had meat, but you had a ripe avocado, man. Oh, you're in heaven. Yeah. So going back to the topic, it's amazing how we take breakfast for granted these days. I mean, you come downstairs, you walk into the kitchen, there's bread, there's bagel, there is English muffin, there is cereal, there is cereals, you know, there are boxes of cereal, milk in the fridge, orange juice, whatever. Anyway, what I'm trying to say though, this was what life was like for me as a kid growing up. We never had much, but we make do with what we had. We were very poor. It's something I repeat in these videos over and over. We were, I grew up in poverty, but despite all that, we make do with what we had, and we never allowed it to get us down. I mean, there are times when we thought about it. I personally thought about it and wonder, as a kid, is this how life is for everybody else around me? Is this how life is? Is this how life is gonna be? But looking back, I don't think my family was unique in those circumstances. Many other families were poor, just that you don't know everybody's business. But based on the time period and what life was like back then, I mean, the life experiences were quite similar to what I had. But we never allowed it to get us down. We were happy nevertheless. Even when we were hungry sometimes, we were still happy. And life changes. Life is a bit better now. So I'd like to hear what life was like for you growing up. What were some of the things you had for breakfast as a kid? I'm not talking about, the fancy stuff that, we have at home nowadays. What were some of the stuff that you had as a kid growing up? Did you had to go to school without having a breakfast sometimes? Right? Was breakfast like a foreign language to you? What was life like for you back in those days, 70s and beyond? Hit me up in the comments and let me hear it. All right? So until we talk again, this is Memory Lane. Tune in next time and we talk some more, all right? Take it easy.